Hey, how's everybody doing? It's Baby Yaga, or should I say Baby Blue Bookworm? And welcome back to another episode of Baby Reviews Books. So, as usual, since this book series is based off my book blog on WordPress, the written version or transcript, if you want to read alongside me, will be available in the link in the description below, so you can just click it and let's read together. So, for today's episode, we will be reviewing Osamu Dazai's No Longer Human. So, I apologize if I may be butchering some names, so you can just correct me in the comments if you wish. So, before I get into the book, I just want to make like a quick description of the book, the copy I got. It's very minimal. I like the cover and design. It's very simple, just using the colors pink and black. I actually wanted to, dress up and wear something a little more fitting. Like, I was also supposed to wear something pink or black or a combination of both, but I was like, I'll just wear my PJs. I mean, I'm literally gonna sleep after I film this. And also because this is a story that I advise you to not read at night. But I was like, I might as well just go in with the theme because I did something silly, which is reading the book before bedtime. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just film wearing my PJs. And also because I've grown attached to these pajamas. So before I begin as well, just a quick warning and disclaimer. This story contains graphic depictions of violence, there's sexual abuse, and there are also themes such as depression, suicide, drug usage, and alcoholism. So, for both this video and the blog post, viewer and reader discretion is advised. No Longer Human was the final published title of Dazai's novel, but the original Japanese title, when translated literally, means disqualified from being human, which was a lot more grim and dark compared to its new and final title. However, No Longer Human is also alternatively titled as A Shameful Life, which comes from the first sentence of the first part of the book. Mine has been a life of much shame. I can't even guess myself what it must be to live the life of a human being. So specifically for this review, almost got hit in the face. I will be referring to the New Directions publication of the book, which was translated by Donald Keene. The title makes a lot more sense for me now. And I will be honest with you guys, when I first heard of this book, as well as I saw the cover, I thought that maybe this book was like some edgy science fiction tale about an alien mutation, or maybe somebody got infected by like an incurable disease or a virus, like think of zombies. Turns out No Longer Human is a lot more darker than what I had initially thought it was about. So this YouTuber named Wendy Gun actually has a better review of the book, so you can just find him. I will provide the link to his video below, in which he tackled both the original novel and Junji Ito's manga adaptation of the book. So if in case you guys didn't know, Junji Ito's this manga illustrator who is known for like illustrating some of the most horrifying things. I mean, I've never personally read any of Junji Ito's mangas or have seen any of his works, but I can tell from Wendy Gun's review that yeah, those illustrations were pretty eerie. So if you're interested, you can check out Wendy Gun's review after this video or even before continuing on with this video. Actually, his review helped guide me as I wrote my review, and the concept of Dazai's novel applied in Ito's mangas certainly contributed to the darker themes presented, which I will be discussing later. So No Longer Human is the story of a young man by the name of Oba Yozo, in which the story was divided into three quote-unquote notebooks or parts, and the third notebook was also divided into two smaller parts as he documented his feelings of isolation from the moment he was born up until the present. For decades, Yozo has always felt out of place in society, which Yozo shares in his first notebook, but it is through the unknown narrators in the prologue perspective that gives us a starting point on what they believe Yozo's life was really like growing up. So we have three pictures that were being compared and looked at in the prologue, with the first two portraits describing Yozo as a handsome, attractive man, but the third picture invoked fear in the narrator, no longer Yozo being recognizable in the photo, which also explains the title of Dazai's novel. The remaining photograph is the most monstrous of all. It is quite impossible in this one even to guess the age, though the hair seems to be streaked somewhat with gray. It was taken in the corner of an extraordinarily dirty room. His small hands are held in front of him. This time he is not smiling. There is no expression whatsoever. The picture has a genuinely chilling, foreboding quality, as if it caught him in the act of dying as he sat before the camera, his hands held over a heater. That is not the only shocking thing about it. The face is not merely devoid of expression. It fails even to leave a memory. I think that even a death mask would hold more of an expression, leave more of a memory. That effigy suggests nothing so much as a human body to which a horse's head has been attached. Something ineffable makes the beholder shudder in distaste. I have never seen such an inscrutable face on a man. In the first notebook, which takes place during his childhood and early education years, Yozo describes feeling like an outsider from a young age as he struggled to connect with his family and peers. He recalls feeling misunderstood and inadequate despite his efforts to conform to societal expectations. He also recalls experiences towards the dullness of human emotions, noting that he was not one who consumed big amounts of food because he did not feel hunger, as well as did not initially believe that certain objects such as bridges or pillowcases did not have a purpose. So, for example, when he found out that these things have their own purposes, like a bridge for connecting two places together, or a pillowcase to protect the pillow, he grew bored of these concepts immediately. Yozo discusses his hunger and sees himself as a sickly kid. I have been sickly ever since I was a child and have frequently been confined to bed. How often, as I lay there, I used to think that uninspired decoration sheets and pillowcases make. It wasn't until I was about 20 that I realized that they actually served a practical purpose, and this revelation of human dullness stirred dark expression in me. Again, I have never known what it means to be hungry. I don't mean by this statement that I was raised in a well-to-do family. It sounds peculiar to say it, but I have never been aware that my stomach was empty. When, as a boy, I returned home from school, the people at home would make a great fuss over me. Seeking to please, as I invariably did, I would mumble that I was hungry and stuff a dozen jelly beans in my mouth, but what they meant by feeling hungry completely escaped me. Yozo always found himself different compared to other people, his imagination running wild and letting him be isolated from his own peers. As his school years began, he became what his peers considered a class clown, always making them laugh. Yozo found it difficult to relate to others and he felt like an outsider. To cope with his sense of alienation and insecurity, he adopted a facade of humor, using comedy as a way to deflect attention from his inner turmoil. I remember back in 10th grade, we had this batch production of a play, and the script written out included stereotypical students or characters in high school, like a bad boy, a class clown, Miss Popular, etc. So, one of my close friends, hi, Michael, he was chosen to play the class clown role, and I remember how well he played out that role. The class clown indeed used humor to hide his pain and believed that by making others laugh, he'd feel a sense of validation to further mask his uneasiness and troubles in life. I'd like to believe that perhaps his clowning behavior, and I mean Yozo's clowning behavior now, was also caused by how he was sexually abused by some of his family's servants, as he had up in a large and wealthy family with his father being a politician. This has made Yozo feel as if he were corrupted and never said anything to his parents because his own alienation from his family made him not see the need to do so. My true nature, however, was one diametrically opposed to the role of a mischievous imp. Already by the time I had been taught a lamentable thing by the maids and manservants, I was being corrupted. I now think that to perpetrate such a thing on a small child is the ugliest, vilest, cruelest crime a human being can commit. But I endured it. I even felt as if it enabled me to see one more particular aspect of human beings. I smiled in my weakness. If I had formed the habit of telling the truth, I might perhaps have been able to confide unabashedly to my father or mother about the crime, but I could not fully understand even my own parents. To appeal for help to any human being, I could expect nothing from that expedient. Supposing I complained to my father or mother or to the police, the government, I wondered if in the end I would not be argued into silence by someone in good graces with the world, by the excuses of which the world approved. Relating my own experiences with Yozos, I wouldn't say that I was the class clown before either, but I knew I had certain ways to get my peers to laugh, and even if that laughter was not always positive. But perhaps I had also personally used humor as a means of coping with the bullying and own isolation I felt throughout, especially in my high school years. But I would ask myself, or maybe you may ask me, is that from a corrupted childhood? The answer is no. While I had grown up in a privileged household, it was my own experiences in school that, and admittingly, have led to my once cynical and bitter behavior, especially as I entered college. In the second notebook, Yozo was also known to fake certain moments in his life, such as when he had pretended to fall down, and the boy who commented on his action, Takechi, saying that he knew Yozo was faking, and in fear of his true self being exposed, Yozo turns to befriending Takechi. That friendship anyway becomes beneficial for both of them, and they hang out after school, and Takechi even sees Yozo as an appealing man who could easily woo anybody. However, the purpose of the friendship was still for Yozo to make sure that Takechi doesn't expose him for his unmasked self. And Yozo himself had feared getting too close to people, only using Takechi to further hide himself. After finding solace in clowning, Yozo learns to paint and draw his own works depicting horrifying things, but believes it represents his quote-unquote true self. I could see why Junji Ito decided to adapt No Longer Human as a manga. Yozo would have pursued art school after high school, but his always away father sent him to a traditional college instead, where Yozo meets Horiki, a rebellious student who takes Yozo out to drink, which will lead Yozo later to fall in love or get into really problematic, disastrous affairs, engage in sexual activities, drink frequently, even go as far as attending meetings about the Communist Party. We must also take note that No Longer Human was written in the post-war Japan, so the story may have taken in a similar time period. Horiki, as Yozo described him, is somebody who helps him escape. So I turned my money over to Horiki and the two of us went out together. He was a great bargainer, and this perhaps earned him the ranking of expert in pleasure seeking. He displayed unusual proficiency in spending minimal sums of money with maximum effect. His talents extended to getting whatever he wanted in the shortest possible time without ever having recourse to taxis. He gave me a practical education. Thus, if we stopped in the morning at a certain restaurant on our way home from a prostitute's and had a bath with our meal, it was a cheap way of experiencing the sensation of living luxuriously. It never caused me to feel the least anxiety or fear. We then move on to Yozo's love life, which was problematic to say the least. From the first notebook, Yozo mentions that women found a man in him that could keep a love secret. Yozo had engaged in so much troublesome activities like sleeping with prostitutes, drinking more. So much his schoolwork had suffered as well as his artistry. He had skipped school, spent a lot of money, and when his father sold their old home after his term ended, Yozo ended up broke. He had got into an affair with a married woman named Tsuneko, committing a quote-unquote love suicide as the two of them had attempted to drown themselves one evening after finding solace in their shared grief. However, Yozo survived and the woman did not. We threw ourselves into the sea at Kamakura that night. She untied her sash, saying she had borrowed it from a friend at the cafe, and left it folded neatly on a rock. I removed my coat and put it in the same spot. We entered the water together. She died. I was saved. Yozo found temporary happiness in his affair with Tsuneko, but all changes after Tsuneko's successful suicide with investigations following Yozo. The news reaches Yozo's family, with his father angered that they were close to disowning him. Yozo was not responsive and had mourned Tsuneko's death, realizing that he indeed, in fact, loved Tsuneko. Facing charges for the assisted suicide, Yozo was sent to a private jail cell, but he was bailed out the next day, a police officer telling him to look out for himself. So Yozo reaches out to a guarantor his family knew as Flatfish, real name was not revealed, to temporarily take him in. However, Yozo is lost in thought when the attorney asks him if what had happened to him was real, bringing back memories from Yozo's first exchange with Takechi. In the first half of the third notebook, because of his actions, Yozo is expelled from his college. Flatfish continues to watch over Yozo. However, instead of serving as positive guidance in his life, Flatfish only leads Yozo to more self-destructive tendencies to follow, who had stopped him from leaving the house and seemingly discouraged him from following his dreams as a painter. Yozo soon runs away from Flatfish's home and wanders to the city. He meets Shizuko through Horiki, who is a single mother that lives with her 5-year-old daughter, Shigeko. Shigeko eventually sees Yozo as a fatherly figure as Yozo lives with mother and daughter, spending time with Shigeko as they watched kites fly together and he helped Shizuko illustrate for her magazine. However, he still finds little to no happiness and runs away from them, even if Shizuko had plans on marrying the guy. And his depression and living situation worsens when Shigeko opens up to him about how she wants her real father back. And since later on, Shizuko had organized a meeting with Horiki and Flatfish to discuss Yozo's future. And even Horiki becomes wary and condescending towards him, and this leads them to their friendship ending. It escalates into more self-loathing and depression drinking, and Yozo eventually cuts ties with mother and daughter. After leaving Shizuko, Yozo walks into a bar and befriends the bartender who lets him sleep upstairs. This bartender doesn't have a name, or at least she was not really discussed throughout the story, but she's gonna serve a significance throughout the ending of the book. A year passes and Yozo later meets a 17-year-old named Yoshiko, who is a red alert. So Yoshiko and Yozo get into an affair and he must manipulate the poor kid. And I will say kid because she's 17 years old. She's a freaking minor. He took advantage of her, and because, Yoshiko was like blindsided and sort of wearing those rose-colored glasses because she showed him a lot of affection. She took care of him when he was drunk. I'll just say that's literally Knives Chow and Scott Pilgrim. Changed my mind, and I'm probably gonna get cancelled over this, but it's true. And I guess Yozo even finds joy in whatever affair they got into. Like, he makes this deal, even if it was supposed to be a joke, that he would stop his drinking if Yoshiko marries him. And he even sleeps with her and takes advantage of her because she's a virgin. Like, good lord. Like, he was like, oh, it's free real estate. Like, again, that is a 17-year-old girl. They get married anyway, and for a while, Yozo stops his drinking habits. He even believed that he would find happiness, so like maybe their married life was peaceful. Then he even reconnects with Horiki, who encourages him to visit Shizuko and Shigeko sometimes. So after these former besties spend time together, I guess karma kinda hit both of these people because Yozo later witnesses Yoshiko getting another man. And Yozo is deeply troubled by this, but he doesn't do anything to help Yoshiko. Instead, he tries to tell himself that this sort of thing is simply another aspect of the behavior of human beings. Horiki, for his part, announces that he's leaving, so like, in Filipino concept, we call that FO, which means friendship over. At which point Yozo retreats and continues to drink gin and cry until Yoshiko appears and offers him some food. But you know what? Yozo just saying that it's another aspect of the behavior of humans. It's like Yozo just became numb. And his alcoholism returns, and one night he decides to consume an entire box of sleeping pills in search of quote-unquote sugared water. I have no idea what the hell that means. Then he loses his consciousness for 3 days. Drunkenly, he wanders the streets one night and then Yozo throws up blood and falls into a snowbank. Mood, I think, like, I remember when I fell face flat onto the street, the freaking street. And for purposes, since I do not want to get in trouble, I am not going to curse on YouTube. So, the original blog post I'll be publishing has a lot of swear words, but obviously I cannot say that on YouTube because kids possibly are watching my content. So, he falls into a snowbank, but he picks himself back up and he decides to go to the pharmacy to get some medicine. It's late, but there's still a woman that just runs the pharmacy, I guess. And then when she sets her eyes on Yozo, they both immediately seem to recognize each other's suffering and they start crying, at which Yozo backs away and returns to his apartment. Yeah, real mood. Yeah, but going back, he falls into a snowbank, right? That just reminds me of when I literally got into an accident in school. I was like going down this ledge or something, and I thought that, oh, maybe there's a step below. I was like, okay, I'll just wing it, and I was running late to my class. I decided to dive, and then I fell face flat on the freaking street. Like my aqua flask, not sponsored by the way, rolls off into the street, and if I didn't pick it up immediately, I would have been run over by jeeps and cars and whatever was in there. Worst day of my life. Yeah, so Yozo went out of the pharmacy, but he comes back later and the pharmacist gives him some morphine. Yeah, so you guessed it. Dude gets into a freaking drug addiction near the end of the story and even gets into an affair with the pharmacist as a means of acquiring morphine. Yeah, see what I did there? I guess he's astonished by how the morphine makes him feel optimistic and unworried. And all of his anxieties seem to melt away, and he frequently experiences a state of elation. How I understood it, the morphine was supposed to slow his alcoholism stuff down. Her voice was full of tenderness as she explained each of the half-dozen medicines. The affection of this unhappy woman was, however, to prove too intense. At the last she said, "This is a medicine to be used when you need a drink so badly you can't stand it." She quickly wrapped the little box. It was morphine. She said that it was no more harmful than liquor, and I believed her. For one thing, I was just at the stage where I had come to feel the squalor of drunkenness, and I was overjoyed to be able to escape after such long bondage to the devil called alcohol. With his morphine addiction leading him eventually to a psychiatric ward, Yozo decides that society will always see him as a reject, being disqualified as a human being. He is still supported financially by his family later, even after their father's passing. And then 3 years pass where Yozo is sent to live with an elderly caretaker hired by his brother. But for once, there's no affair, and Yozo feels neither happiness nor unhappiness. Life simply passes him by, and he's 27, but his hair is already gray, and people would think that he's above 40. Some 2 years have gone by since then. During this interval, I have several times been violated in a curious manner by the old servant named Tetsu. Once in a while, we quarreled like husband and wife. My chest ailment is sometimes better, sometimes worse. My weight fluctuates accordingly. Occasionally, I cough blood. As I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, a hot water bottle on my stomach, I wondered whether I ought to complain to Tetsu. I thought of saying, "These aren't sleeping pills, they're a laxative," but I burst out laughing. I think reject must be a comic noun. I had taken a laxative in order to go to sleep. Now I have neither happiness nor unhappiness. Everything passes. That is the one and only thing I have thought resemble the truth in the society of human beings, where I have dwelled up to now, as in a burning hell. Everything passes. This year I am 27. My hair has become much grayer. Most people would take me for over 40. In the epilogue, we return to the unknown narrator who publishes all 3 of Yozo's notebooks. They meet the bartender whom Yozo has befriended and had given a temporary place to stay, so as previously mentioned. and she also reads Yozo's published notebooks and notes that when human beings get that way, they're no good for anything. But she remembers Yozo fondly, insisting that despite everything, he was a good boy. My spine. Did you cry? No, I didn't cry. I just kept thinking that when human beings get that way, they're no good for anything. It's been 10 years. I suppose he may be dead already. He must have sent the notebooks to you by way of thanks. Some parts are rather exaggerated, I can tell, but you obviously suffered a hell lot of at his hands. If everything written in these notebooks is true, I probably would have wanted to put him in an insane asylum myself if I were his friend. It's his father's fault, she said unemotionally. The Yozo we knew was so easygoing and amusing. And if only he hadn't drunk. No, even though he did drink, he was a good boy, an angel. Yozo's life, to put simply, was messed up as heck. You know this review is about to go down when I start cussing. But because I am a good and a goofy Catholic woman, I'm not gonna swear my YouTube channel because there are probably kids lurking the channel. So themes of social isolation and alienation were explored throughout the novel, as well as mutual suffering, such as Tsuneko and Yozo, or the pharmacist and Yozo, and there's also mental health. But we must consider, why would Osamu Dazai write a story with such a messed up character? The answer is because this book turns out to be a lot darker, truly, than we think it is, as it is mostly based on Dazai's own experiences. He does not insist because of his experiences that the others are all wrong and he alone right. On contrary, he records with devastating honesty his every transgression of a code of human conduct which he cannot fathom. Yet as Dazai realized, the cowardly acts and moments of abject collapse do not tell the whole story. In a superb epilogue, the only objective witness testifies he was an angel, and we are suddenly made to realize the incompleteness of Yozo's portrait of himself. In the way that most men fail to see their own cruelty, Yozo had not noticed his gentleness and his capacity for love. Yozo's experiences are certainly not typical of all Japanese intellectuals, but the sense of isolation which they feel between themselves and the rest of the world is perhaps akin to Yozo's conviction that he alone is not human. Again, his frustrations at the university, his unhappy involvement with the Communist Party, disastrous love affairs, all belong to the past of many writers of today. At the same time, detail after detail clearly is derived from the individual experience of Osamu Dazai himself. Even the New Directions publishing version of this book considers it as semi-autobiographical, and it's the completed final work of one of Japan's most important writers. As I mentioned, it was linked with Dazai's own experiences, including to have committed a love suicide with a bartender like Yozo did. He also took interest in the Communist Party and Marxism, and later, Dazai had taken his own life by once again drowning. I am gonna share this with you guys, but I personally felt isolated as well throughout my life. I would say maybe it was especially more, I guess, noticeable in my high school years. I was bullied in my classes, I was set apart, and I was pretty much a social outcast. I was this lonely reader who was even branded as like one of the weird kids in the batch, or even the weirdest kid. And it wasn't that nobody wanted to be my friend, it was just that I was used a lot by people. Like, I was super cynical as I entered college, and I knew that, I had to make a statement, I had to make an impact, because this is college, this is something new. Maybe my mistakes in the past wouldn't follow me today. But this story really spoke out to me. Like, it hit me hard. I'm pretty sure everyone felt this way as they read it. But for me, I guess it's because of the theme of social isolation. Like, you just feel different from others. You just know that your imagination runs wild. Your imagination is different from how others perceive normal things on a day-to-day basis. And although I wasn't into alcoholism or drug abuse or drug usage, there's still that whole feeling that you just can't belong no matter how much you try. And at this point, you're just gonna give up and realize Even at his young age of 27, Yozo realized that he isn't human and he never was human. Like, the title already makes sense to me that you're no longer human. You just feel so alienated and so apart from society. And I'm probably rambling because this is off script, but I wanted to share it with you guys because I was supposedly a class clown. I was made fun of in my classes. I was even, I wouldn't say mistreated, but there were times that I felt so depressed and down, especially with my classmates' treatments, that I had considered stuff. I'm so sorry. I'm like getting a bit emotional because this book literally broke me. um it's just that it's so hard to believe that, I mean, I get it, like, Yozo's a problematic character. He freaking took advantage of a minor, and I should be worried about that, like, but the thing is, he had family that supported him, like, even if he was nearly disowned because his father was some stuck up politician, and Yozo was taken advantage of by the servants of their household. It just feels sad because he had people that cared for him, yet Yozo refused to see it. Like, and I was at a place like that as well. I had some people who cared about me, even if I felt that nobody wanted to care about me. And I since Friday, I've actually been looking through my old journal, specifically from 10th grade, where my life was probably at its most problematic peak, as I call it, even if I was just like some dramatic ass 16, 17-year-old. What I'm saying is that I guess at some point I was like Yozo, like I had refused to see that people did care about me and always looked so at the negative side of things. I was very cynical. I believed that there was no purpose to live anymore. I had planned pacts, I had attempts, I had written out the most absurd and even downright macabre thoughts in my journals. Like, I was reading them, and while I was laughing at some fond memories, because I have to make myself laugh because I'm actually about to cry. Um, it's just, I don't know what I'm trying to say here is that this novel is so dark. Like, it's the most depressing thing I have ever read. Oh my god, I'm trying to hold back tears. It's like 11:30 in the evening, and I don't know if I'm gonna be able to sleep after this, but yeah. Wrap things up and say that this book was not an easy read, even for myself. Yeah, I've read stories with dark and depressing themes and gruesome scenes, but none of them had hit me hard or struck out to me the most, sending shivers down my spine when I read No Longer Human, especially when the realization hits that Dazai had gone through this in his lifetime. The human condition in itself is problematic, and my entire takeaway from this is that we still lack understanding towards others today until now. No. And no matter what we do, somebody will still go through something. Yet even talking things out won't lead to something good, and like Dazai and Yozo, some things just corrupt us for the rest of our lives, and we no longer see the need to change. Yeah, that got dark pretty fast. Yeah, it makes sense why alienation is one of the themes observed in this book. It just makes me feel sad. I'm very sad, and I finished this book last week, but I decided that I'm gonna need another week to do some research and work on this. I totally did not procrastinate once again just to get this blog post done, but I'm very sad. I'm very sad because, like, this is just a really sad story. Like, it's messed up. Well, Yozo is that character. I still feel bad for him because this is just what Dazai went through himself. And even if he maybe have gotten the support he needed, even if he refused to take it, there's just some instances that people believe that they cannot change anymore because something had broken them from the very start. That as they get older, they just maintain this cynical attitude. I thought that the bullying I had gone through in high school would persist until my college years, and I was cynical to the point that during the for my freshman year of college up until like perhaps halfway through second year, there's first semester last school year, I had difficulty in making friends. It was hard for me to try and make a connection with people. And I understand this because this was an online class setup still. So, it wasn't really easy to meet up with people in person or get to know them because you only relied on seeing each other on the screen, and even then you never really knew what the other was going through. And as somebody who has seen a lot in their lifetime, not just from the books but in person as well, I guess even if my takeaway at least in this blog post sounded negative, I still want to remind you guys that you have to be kind towards others. If somebody out there deserves kindness, deserves help, or you see the need to help them, please help them. You'll never know what someone else is going through. I'm about to cry again. I'm so sorry. But yeah, this book was super emotional. But of course, this book entry wouldn't have been possible without the help of Super Summary, Lit Charts, Lit Charts, Lit Charts, and this other book blog from WordPress as well called Brian's Muse. Thank you, Brian's Muse. If you want to check out the review as well, they made a good summary of No Longer Human, including an analysis of Dazai's work himself. And yes, I consulted a bit of Wikipedia for this, and of course, Wendy Gun's video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this blog as much as I did, and hopefully you won't get too emotional over this. Again, I have disclaimers and warnings. So this book isn't for the faint-hearted. So if you're not really into like gore and violence and abuse and other darker themes, I suggest skipping through this video. But if you're curious, might as well read it like I did. I was curious. I saw this book from a recommended video, Wendy Gun's video, by the way, and I was like, I need to get this book. You know me, I would see a book recommended on my feed, be it Facebook or Instagram or Reddit or whatever social media platform. I'm gonna be like, yeah, I should read this book. I wouldn't say I have regret reading this book because I definitely learned a lot. And as a sociology major, we've also taken up themes of isolation, alienation, human condition and stuff, like even Marxism. And I'm a sociology major myself, and like I still feel isolated from my own peers until now, but I try to see it as something good because that means my ideas, my absurd ideas, as my friend John puts it, is that what makes me properly stand out among my peers, that my absurd ideas are the reason why sociologists exist in the first place. So I guess thank you, John. So yeah, if you guys want to see more of my book blog posts rather, my link will be in the description below if you want to follow my blog. And I also have 3 other previous videos. I have my book review on The Good Son, Animal Farm, and recently The Handmaid's Tale, good reads by the way. But I also publish content every now and then. I do vlog now whenever I have the chance. I vlog my birthday party, I vlogged a picnic with friends, I vlogged my cousin's wedding, and many more. If you're interested, you can also check out my other content, and a subscription to my channel would be much appreciated. The subscription is completely free, of course, and you get to be notified of new posts from yours truly, and you also get to help support the channel, and your support would mean a lot to me. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next book blog post. Bye! Bombastic side eye. Criminal offense side eye. That's just me to Yozo, honestly.